In the latest twist to the Adani Hindenburg issue, Smriti Irani, minister in the government, is accusing billionaire George Soros of declaring war against India. I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo story. It has been a fortnight of India being in the global headlines for one reason or the other. Our focus today on the program is that this set of paradoxical headlines. Today, Smriti Irani has accused billionaire philanthropist George Soros of declaring war against India. This after Soros commented on the Adani Hindenburg issue and said he believed it would lead to a weakening of Prime Minister Modi's quote unquote stranglehold over India. Now, this has been a fortnight of India hitting the global headlines. There have been the tax raids on the British Broadcasting Corporation that have led to an enormous amount of debate in the global press. But it's also been a week of India hitting the global headlines for very, very positive reasons. Not just Gautam Adani, there have been many other reasons for the world to talk about India. There has been, of course, beyond the Hindenburg factor, what has been happening in Turkey, extraordinary relief operations by our military. There's been the historic Air India order, an order by the Tatas for new aircraft from both Airbus and Boeing that has led to some saying that it is so historic that Biden was compelled to say it would create 1 million jobs in the United States of America. Given the headlines that Turkey and Tatas delivered for India, why would the government want to spend energy being distracted by either seeming to defend a Gautam Adani or by unleashing the tax agencies on the BBC? How do we understand this paradoxical fortnight of how the world is looking at India? All of this has happened on a day when the Supreme Court, by the way, has refused the government's proposal for a sealed envelope of experts who will look into the Adani Hindenburg issue, saying that the court will choose its own names and will transparently put them in the public domain. Let's introduce our guests as we look at the India story in the global headlines this past fortnight. Joining us on the program is Major General Dhruv Katoch. He's, of course, a military veteran and also a leading officer at the India Foundation. Good to see you, sir. Also joining us on the program is Ambassador Venu Rajamani. He has been, of course, one of our senior most diplomats. He's now a professor of practice at the OP Jindal University. It's good to see you, Venu. Also joining us is Dr. Baru, who's, of course, an author and editor, a former media advisor to the Manmohan Singh government in its first tenure. Joining us as well on the program, Mohandas Pai, who's, of course, a venture capitalist, industrialist, commentator, a co-founder of Infosys. And finally, Aarti Jairat, columnist, commentator, is with us as well. And I'm going to play out Smriti Irani's comments, very angry comments, in just a moment as George Soros waded into the Adani Hindenburg dispute. But I just want a big picture kind of perspective first from, let me start with Mohandas Pai. Mohan, there's contradictions here. There's great sort of sense of India's assertion as an emerging global power or an actual global power, the purchase of aircraft, Biden having to say an Indian company will create 1 million jobs, the Indian military on Turkey. And then there's the perceived sort of pettiness of the tax action against the BBC. There's now this very public spat with George Soros. There's Adani Hindenburg. How do you understand these contradictions, Mr. Pai?
Well, Barkha, first of all, the tax issue is a very normal issue. They've been giving notices to BBC. BBC has not responded. It's the coincidence that they came for the search, just when this controversy was ending. So I don't read much into that. This is being used by some part of the leftist media and part of the Indian media to blow it up as if there's vendetta against BBC. And if any of you think that a tax raid or a search or a survey on BBC is going to scare BBC, we're all in cuckoo land. I don't think BBC will be scared of anything of this. They'll go to court and the court will decide what happens, because there is a history of BBC being arraigned before the income tax and going to court and getting orders in their favor. This will continue. So what's the big deal? I don't think any of these multinationals are scared of any tax raid, or they'll shiver in the boots and change their view because the taxman comes calling. Is a very normal feature in many countries. And as far as the so-called contradiction about what is happening with George Soros, we must understand George Soros has been funding a lot of organizations globally which have an anti-India line. The daughter of a former prime minister is working there, getting money. A lot of Indians have sold their soul to George Soros for money and to carry on their personal vendetta against India. Harsh Mandar is there. the Indian Muslim American Council, something is there, some Sikh council are there. George Soros has been carrying out. A lot of Indians have sold their soul for a few dollars more to work with him. This is politics. So he has come out in the open, declared war. So Smriti Irani is declaring war, and that is politics. Let it go on. There are many people here in this country who want regime change. They are not able to fight Prime Minister Modi's popularity. So using George Soros' money to use media, I hope you don't fall into the trap to have a negative narrative. They forget the great majority of Indians don't read the BBC, don't see the English media, and the English media has almost no impact on the voting in this country. As if our democracy depends on a certificate by George Soros. He's a predatory short seller. I mean, we don't depend on him. We are a big country by ourselves. Our people decide what we are. And that's what is going to happen. So all this blah, blah, I find it very funny.
Okay, as for me, I'm sort of committed to being a professional.
You are independent. You are independent,
yes,
Barka.
Neither interested in chamcha or morcha. Interested in doing my job.
Absolutely.
But thanks for the concern, Mohan. Appreciate it. Do subscribe when we start our paid subscriptions to
yes,
Mojo Story. That will be your contribution to independent media. Yes. But okay, look. Jokes aside, Dr. Baru, you've been on the other side, both sides of the fence. You've been in government when it was your task to actually work on a narrative for the government, for the Indian state. What's happening right now, because I think the BJP is a pretty smart party and doesn't do anything by accident. I think there's a very conscious othering of foreign media, of foreign organizations, a la Indira Gandhi's in the 70s, from George Soros to the BBC. That's what appears to be happening. Is it going to work for the government domestically? Is it going to hurt them internationally? I think that's the question. Sanjay Baru, please go ahead. Sanjay, just unmute yourself at your end, please. You're muted from your end. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if it will work for them or work against them. But the point is, because, in India, one can say everything and the opposite, and both are true. So we have contradictory situations all the time. So I don't see anything particularly new about the fact that on the one hand, some positive things are happening. On the other hand, some negative things are happening. Now, on the real question about what does this mean in terms of image, etc., I think the fact is that the Prime Minister's image has taken a knock, and there is a recognition that it has taken a knock. Now, he is obviously preparing to be the chairman of G20 this year, when the entire world leadership is going to be in Delhi. It's not a particularly nice time for all these negatives to come out. But the point is, why does Smriti Irani have to go and make a statement on George Soros? It's okay. Different people have different opinions. It's not as if the entire world has always appreciated our leadership over the years. There are people who like India, there are people who don't like, or the people who appreciate India, people who don't appreciate. I think you should leave it par for the course and get on with the job. And this kind of targeted response to me suggests a certain weakness. I have increasingly come to believe that the BJP today, and particularly Prime Minister Modi, is increasingly on the defensive. And this is a defensive reaction. This is not a reaction of confidence. I mean, George Soros declaring war on India? Oh, what the hell? I mean, he's an investor, right? And all investors use their brains. Okay, one investor says India is a good destination. Another investor says India is not a good destination. No, people like Mohandas Pai are not going to hear only one side. They'll hear everybody and take their investment decision. So I don't think it's a big deal that George Soros said something. It's an interesting thing that he has said it at the Munich Security Conference. I mean, to me, the venue is more interesting than what he has said. Munich Security Conference is an important conference. Normally, every year, our National Security Advisor has been going there. I don't think this year, I don't know if he has gone or not. But at that venue, for him to say this suggests that, he thinks that there is an audience that will appreciate what he's saying.
And do you think, Sanjay, and do you think the government should have just ignored it? Do you think the government should have just ignored what Soros said about linking Gautam Adani to Prime Minister Modi? And then linking it to what he called democratic revival of India?
No, that is his opinion. I mean, everybody has an opinion about everything. Why should any responsible minister of the government respond? I don't understand. I think the BJP spokesperson could have responded. That's fine. There's a political response. There's a political criticism. But frankly, any official response from the government has to have gravitas. It has to have weight. And this kind of response that too coming from a minister who has nothing to do with foreign affairs, nothing to do with finance. I mean, I don't even remember what Smriti Irani's portfolio is. Why? I mean, it boggles my mind, baffles me that the government has become so defensive. I see it as a defensive action of a
Okay.
government
Let's
increasingly
hear
preachy,
her.
increasingly nervous.
You think the government is increasingly nervous. Some would say the government is asserting sort of India's place, as it were, in the new world order. We've had two very differing perspectives from Mohan and Sanjay. I just want to play out for you what Smriti Irani said as Mr. Soros took the stage at the Munich Security Conference and linked the Adani issue to the Prime Minister and said he believed it could lead to what he called a democratic revival, quote unquote. This is how Minister Irani responded.
The man who broke the Bank of England, a man who is known and designated so by a nation as an economic war criminal, has now pronounced his desire to break the Indian democracy. As you all know, George Soros, an international entrepreneur who hedges bets against many countries, has now declared his ill intentions to intervene in the democratic processes of India. That George Soros wants a government which is pliable to his needs is more than evident from his statements. That he has pronounced funding of over $1 billion, particularly to target leaders like Prime Minister Modi, is significant.
Venu Rajamani, there have been two instances where there has been a proclamation that something is happening that is against India. Gautam Adani first claimed it with the Hindenburg report, and now Minister Irani has claimed it with George Soros' statement. In the middle of all this, you've got an army on the ground in Turkey. You've got Biden, Modi, and Macron sort of fronting the purchase of this aircraft. And then you've got the raids on the BBC. I mean, I can't imagine what is going on for diplomats who have to manage all of these varying different strands. You've been there, done that. How do you look at the big picture today, Mr. Raju?
Barkha, I would entirely agree with you. What happened, the Indian Army in Turkey, the Air India deal, these are very positive developments for India. They cast India in a very good light across the world. And as you said earlier, in fact, those numbers are quite shocking. President Biden saying 1 million jobs are going to be created across the US by this deal is truly an amazing figure. I hope it is right, his assessment is right. But still, it is truly a very impressive number. When all this is going on, why is the Indian government so defensive is difficult to understand. In fact, I was looking at the whole statement of Soros, and what he says about Donald Trump is much, much worse. He calls Trump a deeply flawed character, a confidence trickster whose narcissism grew into a disease, etc. And Soros spoke about many others. He spoke about Xi Jinping. He spoke about Erdogan. It was not something which was directed at India alone. It was and I think we also need to keep in mind that he's 92 years old. So a 92-year-old being seen as declaring war on India is really a little too much. So throughout, you were referring to my diplomatic career. You know, right from my first posting as a young third secretary, one of the first challenges you always have when somebody criticizes India is whether you ignore it or you respond to it and you make the issue bigger and bigger. In this instance, very clearly, by doing this press conference, the issue has been blown out of proportion. If the government had ignored Soros, hardly anyone would have even known that he made that speech at the Munich Security Conference.
Yeah, that's the point. I think both Sanjay and Venu are driving. Mohan Das Pai, of course, disagrees. General Katoch, let me bring you in, and then Aarti. What's actually going on here? How does a country simultaneously assert itself in such a grand way, as I said, with our military in Turkey, asserting economic sort of rise with what the Tatas have done, with both sort of Macron and Biden needing to personally comment on that deal, which is actually a private company buying aircraft from another private company, and then the BBC and the Adani headlines, some would say, cast a shadow. What would you say, General Katoch?
Thank you, Barkha. Barkha, I think in any big nation there will be various contradictions all playing out at the same time. I think that is simply a part of the game of any big country, and we are a country of just a minute.
I think someone's trying to Skype call you, General. That sounds like a Skype or a Zoom call, but go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I understand that there will be contradictions, but I look at this in a slightly different way. Firstly, as far as the BBC incident is concerned, I think we have got a very sanctimonious Western bloc, very sanctimonious. And if we've just gone and done a little bit to the BBC, and my God, the heavens have burst. Wow, Indians have raided BBC. Every single Western country has banned the Russian media to talk of the war in Ukraine, and they talk of press freedom. I think the entire Western world is a bunch of hypocrites, and they must be exposed for what they are. That is my comment as far as the BBC is concerned. They are not worth more than that. I don't want to comment on that. But there is something larger which I have written about, and I feel very, very conscious of what it is. And I will use the word regime change. Now, these are very specific operations which are being done by various countries. The West is particular about it. The Russians have been accused by the Americans of attempting it. The Chinese are also in the game. But regime change, unfortunately, is a reality which we need to accept. And they wish to carry out a regime change in India. Now, one of the statements which Smriti Irani made, she hinted at this very clearly. She said they want a pliable government where they can do business with. And today, if we have a pliable government, the Indians will be the most democratic, sweet people in the world because we are following their dictates. They still want us to be a colony of the white man. And I'm afraid those days are over as far as George Soros is concerned. I just one small comment which I wish to make, and then I'll stop. In India, it is the radical left and the Islamists combined, which is combined with people like Soros. And they know better than anyone else that the best way to upend India and destroy freedom is to muzzle the voices of anybody who opposes them. And that is what we are seeing here. Now, these people, they masquerade as defenders of information, but in effect, they are simply just authoritarian thugs. That's the word I will use. Now, for Soros, an article in the Washington Times gives details about the Soros-backed disinformation group. I've just read that today. It is called the Global Disinformation Index. Now, this group receives funds from the US government also. It is a woke organization, and which it seeks to censor and demonize any conservative.
Let me, you made a lot of different points. I want to just go to Aarti, because Aarti, today I was pulling out a newspaper archive from the 1970s because I wanted to see exactly what Indira Gandhi had said when she banned the BBC. And what's very interesting is on the 3rd of March, 1976, the front page of the Indian Express quotes Mrs. Gandhi saying, foreign critics should stop interfering in India's democratic process. These people just need an excuse to criticize us. They can't basically stand the rise of India. It seemed like, politics turning full circle, the kind of statements we're hearing today. Is there a political plan to how the BJP is approaching foreign media, foreign agencies? Today, Kiran Rijiju, for example, made a comment saying, these people who trust Indian global media, foreign media, more than they trust Indian agencies. He said it in the context of the tax raids on the BBC. Do you think the BJP, being such a veteran political observer, is actually working to a political plan here, which involves the othering of the foreign media in particular? Mohan doesn't agree, but let Aarti come in. Aarti?
Barkha, I'm glad you brought in Indira Gandhi, because I was going to actually say that, the echoes from the 1970s, they're so strong today. They're so strong today. You remember she accused Jayaprakash Narayan of being a CIA agent, because he was leading, this whole movement against Indira Gandhi. And, what did it lead to? Ultimately, it led to the declaration of emergency, which was a fatal mistake by Indira Gandhi. And when she finally lifted the emergency in 1977, she was swept out of power. She was personally defeated. Forget about her party. She was personally defeated because she had turned everybody against her. Of course, today we don't have that kind of situation. And perhaps, the BJP and Narendra Modi have learnt from Indira Gandhi's mistakes. So, perhaps they're not going to declare an emergency. But it is surprising that they are falling into that same paranoia that she fell into, at the time when she started getting politically weaker. So, I mean, this paranoia, because it does seem to be paranoia, is it an indication that Narendra Modi is feeling besieged, that he's feeling that he's under pressure, that, these attacks that are coming, whether it's from the BBC or Hindenburg or whatever, have shaken him? It's very difficult to answer these questions, and it's very difficult to answer whether the BJP is working according to a plan, because we only discover all these things in hindsight, whether it was a plan or it wasn't a plan,
Yeah.
But to me, the reaction, is so similar to Indira Gandhi. And Indira Gandhi was acting out of a paranoia. I mean, she was definitely on the defensive. She was worried. She was feeling vulnerable. And, since the echoes are so strong, the only conclusion that I can come to is that maybe there is a similar kind of apprehension creeping into this government.
So the wonderful thing, I think, as Sanjay said in the beginning, is that everything in India and its is opposite is often simultaneously true. As you can see on this program, the same set of facts lead to completely diametrically opposite conclusions depending on how people think and what they think about the present government or indeed about the opposition. Mohandas Pai, let me bring you in here. Sanjay says this is a defensive response. Venu says when somebody attacks India, often the best thing to do when nothing's really at stake, right? Nothing. The Indian state isn't going to be weakened because George Soros says so. Indian people aren't going to vote one way or the other because most Indians will not know who George Soros is. We have to explain he's a billionaire philanthropist. This is who he is. This is how much he's worth. You do a poll on the streets, nobody knows who Soros is. Why not ignore him? I'm not saying attach credence to him. Why not ignore him?
Barka, there is a very important difference which I am sure Sanjay and Venu should understand. I'm sure they do. That is, if anybody in Europe makes a silly statement about India, ignore them because there are no consequence. But George Soros is putting a lot of money into NGOs and entities in this country, feeding a large part of Lutyens Delhi, including Harsh Mandar, Salil Shetty and others, who are going to create trouble with all these NGO networks in the future. So what Smriti Irani is saying very clearly is, we know what you're going to do and we're going to oppose you and we're ready to do battle. It's a political issue because George is putting money here. If some European makes some silly statement, who cares a damn? Nobody cares a damn. We all know that they keep making silly statements all the time. If an American makes it, who cares a damn? Because they're not putting the money. George has said he's willing to put $1 billion for regime change, and that is the thing, and he's putting a lot of money. When this farmers agitation took place, a lot of money of George that went there. When the CIA agitation took place, a lot of money that went there. The money is coming in, feeding all these people. And you know who these people are. I know who these people are. Everybody here knows who these people are. And that is what Smriti Irani is alluding to say that, okay, you're trying to do that, we're going to battle with you. Otherwise, George Soros is a predatory short seller. If he's not putting the money there, why will anybody bother about that? It is the money. It's the money that matters. And he said 1 billion is a lot of money. And a lot of people who want to work with some political parties in this country to join together to create a different set of narratives. That is the issue, Barka. Let's understand that very clearly.
Okay, let me bring in Dr. Baru, who seemed very amused with your suggestion that Soros is pumping money into India. The ultimate goal is regime change. Dr. Baru, let me take that to you.
Well, you talk to anybody in this country who gets any money from an external agency for any work that they do legally, the regime in this country has become so very difficult. You have so much of control over foreign funding of think tanks, of research organizations, of media, etc. So this very powerful government at present in Delhi should be worried about $1 billion from George Soros destabilizing India. I mean, come on, Mohan. I expected smarter, argument from the man from Infosys.
What would
Guys
you have
are
done?
making-
What would you have done, Sanjay, if you were in this had happened in UPA 1? You were the press advisor to Dr. Manmohan Singh, and this had happened. What would you have advised the government to do, Sanjay, before
Ignore
I
it.
allow Mohan a rebuttal?
Ignore it, and if it had to be responded to, do it politically, not through the minister of the government, not through a spokesperson of the government. A government of India should not be responding to a George Soros. It's all right if the BJP in its press briefing came out and said something against Soros. Fine, that's a political thing. He's doing some politics. I'm doing politics. That's a normal response. But to get
Okay.
a minister of the union to say it's a war on India, I mean, this is really paranoid.
Mohan, briefly before I go to Venu and General Katoch and Aarti. Mohan,
No.
very briefly.
Look,
Yeah.
I agree with Sanjay. Smriti Irani should not have made the statement as the minister. That I agree. Okay, that I agree, because the government should keep away. They must have the political people and the party to do that. And Smriti doing it is wrong. That I agree, because the government should not take a stand at all these people who make this kind of remarks. I agree. But the fact remains, Barka, in the amnesty case, they sent money to companies to pay for consultancy and other means. So please understand, money doesn't come to NGOs, it has stopped. Now they're sending money to consultancies, they're sending money to news organizations. There are multiple ways of sending money in this country, including Hawala. I'm sure General Katoch will tell you about Hawala money also coming in for some of the jihadi organizations from various places. I'm sure the government knows about it, they're taking steps. This coming in is a money game. So, I agree with Sanjay.
Mohan, billions came into Adani's companies from overseas, which are unaccounted.
No,
Billions.
I don't think they're unaccounted, Sanjay. Please, Sanjay. I don't think you should make the statement without evidence. Please look at his balance sheet.
I mean, there is Mohan, a very serious allegation on offshore companies linked to his brother moving money from private to public companies. You're aware of that allegation, right?
No, I'm aware of the allegation, and regulatory action has been taken. SEBI sees of the matter long back. It is old news. It is not
Let's give others a chance to speak. Okay, it's old news yet unresolved. But may I just underline, if you've just joined us, the Supreme Court today refused to accept the government's suggestion. The government's suggestion of setting up a committee of experts with names put in a sealed envelope, right? I just want to underline what's happening also on that front. There is going to be a committee looking into these allegations. The names will be put into the public domain, says the court. Venu Rajamani, let me ask you the same question I asked Sanjay Baru. If you were posted in, outside of India today, actively serving as a diplomat, and there was all of this media about democracy, revival of democracy, Soros had said what he did, you had to handle it. You were in Munich, let's say you were at the same conference, what would you have done?
Exactly what I said earlier, which is to ignore what he said. Ultimately, I'm still surprised at what Mohandas said or what General Katoch said, because India is big, we are huge, we are strong, we are powerful. We are not going to be shaken by one man or his statement. And even if this whole figure of $1 billion, I have not really seen anything which said that he's putting $1 billion into India. The $1 billion are probably what he puts into promotion of democracy worldwide, which goes into a range of activities across the world. So why should we worry about him? As we discussed earlier, in any such situation, what you need to do is to forget the negative or ignore the negative and play up the positive. You have so much positive going for you. The Air India deal, the Indian Army in Turkey, you play that up. You talk about that, not talk about Soros saying Adani and Modi are linked with each other or their interests are intermingled.
Yeah, General Katoch, that's an important point. Why respond to noise? If you believe it to be noise, if the state and the government believe it to be noise, why engage with noise? Look at these headlines. These are the headlines on your screen, the Air India deal, the Turkey, Syria rescue ops. This should be what defines India in the global imagination. Why should we get drawn into an argument over Adani? Why should we care? Adani is a private company. Let him be investigated. Why should we respond to one person's comments on it? I know Mr. Soros linked it to the Prime Minister. I know that that is where the anger is, or the comment on democracy. But even so, General Katoch.
Barkha, it's very surprising that, if a diplomat says it doesn't matter. Now, do our diplomats want chocolate only? That okay, if something difficult happens, no, please don't do that. My job is going to become difficult. Come on. Indian diplomacy and our diplomats, I presume, are more mature and can handle difficult situations. Regime change, unfortunately, is not something which is in my imagination. The Chinese are scared of it. The Americans have openly stated they will carry out regime change in Russia. I mean, you just see what the think tanks are talking about. Pump in money to Russia, break it into 100 pieces. It is not something which is in the imagination. It is not a question of George Soros. It is, as Mr. Pai said, it is a question of money. Where is the money moving? And $1 billion? $1 billion can create great strife in Delhi. We saw what happened in the Republic Day parade just 2 years ago. I was expecting a similar event this year. It was nipped in the bud because these are very deliberate attempts to target India by groups within India. And I am quite convinced that they are happening. We need to keep a control of it. And any small challenge which comes, it needs to be addressed. Let us not hide. It is sheer cowardice, I will say, that something is happening and we get so scared of our image. We are Indians, we are good boys. For God's sake, we are Mahatma Gandhi chelas. Have a heart. You're Indians, you're a paw.
But we are,
if you're
but
a paw to reckon with,
we are
like
Mahatma
it.
Gandhi.
Tell them we don't like it.
But sir, we are declared Mahatma Gandhi chelas. He's our parent. He birthed.
Well,
we are a turn.
You see, Mahatma Gandhi also said, if you want to talk, he also said his advice to the Hindus: even if the Muslims kill you, die. Even if all of you are dead, it doesn't matter. The Muslim nation will arise over your ashes. It's given in his book. Now, we don't want that. Thank you. We are a nation. We will be strong, and we will not be cowed down by the Americans, the British, the French, the Germans, the Russians, or the Chinese.
Okay,
we will look up to Indian interests. And I think that diplomacy of earlier years is over. It's over. When you bow down, you scrape, please, we want something. No, it's out.
So that would be my question to Aarti, and I must allow Venu a brief rebuttal, yes, before I come to Aarti. Very briefly, Venu, and then Aarti. Venu?
Is my mic unmuted?
Yes. It is.
No, I just wanted to give an example of something which has been the practice with previous governments, even now with the current government. In the UN General Assembly, Pakistani leaders, Pakistani delegates come and say all kinds of things against India. What is our response? We normally choose the junior most officer in the permanent mission of India to go and exercise a right of reply at the end of the evening when most of the delegates have gone, and then release it to the media. Have you seen the foreign minister and the prime minister come out and charging and saying Pakistan said this and Pakistan said that? Have you seen any other minister come in and do all this? So through that gesture, you also convey contempt for what was said by Pakistan in the General Assembly. Similarly, even in this case, it is not that anybody is scared of anything, but what is the right approach to follow? What is the right strategy to follow? At the most, a junior officer could have gone to Munich Security Conference and said all these things are wrong. And that was more than enough.
So I think even Mr. Pai kind of agrees that maybe a minister didn't have to be brought out to deal with Mr. Soros. Aarti Jairat, I again have a political question. The number of people on WhatsApp groups, you have to understand Indians get their source of information today from two sources, YouTube and WhatsApp, above all other sources. WhatsApp groups are replete with theories. Is China behind the timing of the Adani Hindenburg report? Are these American lobbies? Is there someone out to diminish the Indian state as it takes charge of G20? And you'd be surprised at how many people believe this. I'm not right now arguing from logic or empirical evidence. I'm just talking about how politics works. So I come back to that. Is this defensive? Is this aggressive? What's actually going on here? And is there a cost to it? You see, politicians only understand cost: electoral, economic, diplomatic. At the moment, I think the belief is that given that everybody needs a countervailing force to China, given the size of the Indian market, given the galloping pace of the economy, according to IMF forecasts, India can afford for, let's say, the tax rates on BBC to have no cost.
Yeah,
Aarti?
I think that's what the government is, depending on. But, Barkha, I find so many contradictions in the arguments that are being, offered over here. On the one hand, we talk about us being such a big country, so strong, so this, so that. At the same time, we are scared that one little Harsh Mandir with a handful of NGOs is going to be funded by George Soros to bring down the regime. I mean, it's such a bizarre argument. I cannot see any logic in this. The fact is that regime change, if there's going to be one, if at all, is going to be decided by the people of India. I'm sorry, no PFI, no Naxal group, no NGO, no Harsh Mandir, no China can make that decision on behalf of people of India. I think in that way, our democracy is still strong and vibrant. So, to get into this argument that somebody is pumping in billions of dollars to get rid of Modi is really ridiculous, because the people of India will decide whether they want to get rid of Modi or whether they want him to continue for another term. So,
Yeah.
let's, I mean, I think we really need to, get a sense of balance in this entire debate. Where is India? India, as you said, there are wonderful things happening for India. The aircraft deal, our operations in Turkey, the fact that we are chairperson of G20 this year, and the government has already declared that this G20 summit, this entire thing, is going to showcase Indian culture, Indian philosophy, and this whole, thing of, of living being part of an ecosystem, a holistic ecosystem, and carrying everybody with us. We call ourselves a mother of democracy. There is no room for petty behavior in this. There is no room for raids. There is no room for, ministers to come out roaring at one man who said something at a Munich summit. I'm sorry. I mean, we are much bigger than that.
Okay, I need to take last comments. Mohandas Pai, are you not, ironically, Mohan, undermining our robust democratic process by suggesting that money coming in can influence the outcome of our elections? The fact is, governments routinely are brought down, voted in, voted out. State elections show this all the time.
Barkha, what did I say? I said the people of India are going to decide what government they have. So I agree with you. We don't have a difference. But the point is, the irritation and the depletion of political power and time on managing all these malcontents is indeed high. Remember the farms agitation? It went on for 1 year, right? They were spending at least 1 crore a day on feeding all those 100,000 people. Where did the money come from? And look at the narrative that happened. Look at the political capital that had to be spent. Look at all the negativism that has been created. So these people are trying to create negativism. Are they going to, affect political change? No, because, they're living in cuckoo land. I said that earlier. Neither the Delhi press, nor the Lutyens Delhi, nor Joros will do it. But the irritation and the waste of political power and the negative narrative, all that being created, that's what needs to be countered. And that's where the money is coming in, which is unnecessary. And that, I think, we got to expose them. That's the limited point I'm making. That's the impact of money.
Okay,
it can't happen in India.
We just have a statement, the first official statement from the income tax on the BBC raids. I'm just going to read it out. Nothing very detailed. Irregularities detected on certain tax payments. The income tax statement says on its survey at the BBC offices. That's the first official response we've had from the IT, other than source-based leaks. General Katoch, let's bring you in on last comments. An assertive, confident nation. Yes, I agree that you don't turn the other cheek, but an assertive, confident nation, the argument being made here, General Katoch, doesn't need to engage with everybody. The UN example that Mr. Rajamani gave, if you want to just come in on that with the last comment.
But yes, you see, when we talk of Pakistan, I don't think we should talk of Pakistan. It's out. Pakistan will disintegrate. It's over. But George Soros, he may be 92 years old. Unfortunately, he has got billions of dollars which he can pump in to do whatever he wants. Now, I agree with Mr. Mohandas Pai. It is not going to affect the outcome of the elections.
Yeah.
But should not we be careful? Should we simply say, okay, bring in your money, put your dharnas, do whatever you want? No, we will fight it out, because we are not that nation which was there earlier, which would be slapped and then we would say, okay, slap me again and again and again. We will retaliate. Let them be cautious. That's all.
Okay.
That is my very limited point. It is not a question of who's made that statement. I'm not worried about the statement. You see, whether it was made by Smriti Irani, whether she should have made it or not. That is not the point of the debate at all. I don't care whether she made it. If she wouldn't have made it, I'd have been absolutely happy. But the point is the money. Always the money. And I trace money. And I think that's going to be a very serious consequences, because I would just have to give one statement. The hit job on Ambani's was carried out by the Ford Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation. And I'm stating it publicly.
Okay. Venu Rajamani, follow the money is what General Katoch is saying. He's not concerned with responding publicly or not. And that is what the tax agencies will insist they've done with the BBC. The BBC response itself has been quite muted, quite mellow, low-key, which is interesting to watch. The UK government has been absolutely silent. I don't know if they would privately be raising this with our diplomats there. Venu, last thoughts?
Well, I think the scary part of this whole discussion is what Arati said, the whole reference to Indira Gandhi in the 70s, and when these allegations came up and how it led to an emergency. So there is a disquiet, there is a oversensitivity, there is worry over small things. Why it is happening, one doesn't know, but what else can it lead to is a worrying thought, if you look at the historical example.
Dr. Baru, I give you the last word, but I want you to comment on this idea of a new India's place in a new world order, a new approach to diplomacy. Foreign Minister Jay Shankar, he gets lauded often across ideological trenches when he calls out what he says is Western hypocrisy. In particular, ever since India took a position on Russia, there is also one conspiracy theory that there are people out in the world out to get us because we won't stop our purchase of Russian oil. Jay Shankar has acquired a kind of cult following because he's taken this approach now on global stages. Your last thoughts on this idea of a new India and a new world order? So, Sanjay, you're muted. Sanjay, unmute yourself, please. Yeah.
The world order is changing. How it will change remains to be seen. As far as New India is concerned, since we are being asked to follow the money, I was actually going to say this a little earlier in your conversation. Air India's purchase of Boeing, the money is going from India to the United States. Follow the money. Where is the money going? Who is paying? We are paying the United States billions of dollars, France billions of dollars to purchase their friendship. I remember very clearly.
Why do you say we are paying? Tatas are paying. Why are we paying?
Well, Tatas wouldn't have done this deal without a pat on the back, because after all, the Prime Minister is the one who went public on the deal. The point really is, Barkha, go back to the 1990s. Every time there was concern in the United States about human rights violations in China, the Chinese put a demand for a few more Boeings, or for a few more of this or a few more of that. And I have recorded in a recent essay on Kissinger's role, the role played by Kissinger in being the middleman between the Chinese regime and the American political class and the business class. Now we are playing that game. The new India is playing that game. We will buy Boeing from US, we'll buy Airbus from France, and Boeing involves jet engines which the British make. We'll do a trade deal with Australians, with Japan. We are using money to buy friendships, and that is our new diplomacy. I have nothing against it. I know you have the money, you spend the money, but you do it with self-confidence. The Chinese did it with confidence. You have the money, you're buying up support. What kind of regime change would the Americans want when 1 million jobs are being created by this deal in the United States? So I really don't think that anything special about this so-called.
I was going to close, but Mohan is wanting to come in, and Aarti, if you want to come in with a comment. But before, Mohan, can I interrupt you just for a second? I just want to read out the detailed statement of the income tax, which says the income profit shown by various group entities of BBC is not commensurate with the scale of operations. So there's a mismatch between the income and the scale of operations. The survey has also thrown up several discrepancies and inconsistencies with regard to transfer pricing documentation. During the course of the survey, several evidence gathered pertain to the operation of the organization, which indicates that tax has not been paid on certain remittances. I just wanted to update you all on that. Go ahead, Mohan, and then I'll give Aarti the
Yeah,
answer.
Barka,
Mohan, quickly.
Barka,
Yeah.
the BBC thing will go to court, and we should not make a big mountain of a molehill. Now, as far as what Sanjay said, let us admit we have bought our airline companies have bought 500 airplanes, 300 airplanes in the past. But our government in Delhi did not have the brains to make political capital out of it. Modi has been very smart. Tatas are buying and spending $70-80 billion. He's making political capital. He's making sure Macron comes and gives a speech praising India. He's making Biden comes and says, thank you very much. You're creating 1 million jobs, getting publicity. At least praise him for being smart. Government of India is not spending money. The Tatas are spending money. You can't force the Tata to spend $70 billion unless they see a business, because they have to pay for it. So I don't know. I think we must praise Modi for being smart enough to make political capital of it a business deal.
Okay, Aarti, I've got to close. Any last thoughts, Aarti Jairat?
No, but I think Mohandas Pai has just confirmed what I said. Modi is smart. He's doing something good. Then why get so sensitive about a comment made by a George Soros or a film made by BBC? Please, that documentary by the BBC, it was banned and it would have sunk. It would have just sank without a trace. Because you sent your taxman to the BBC office, the whole thing has been revived again, and everybody's talking about that BBC documentary. It's in the news headlines internationally, domestically. You're just prolonging it. Why?
Okay. And that
Makes
the
no
answer to
sense.
that question remains unanswered. Is this to a plan, or is this defensive? Is it assertive? The jury remains out. The last word, thankfully, belongs to the Indian voter on all issues. And that is the bottom line. Thank you very much, General Katoch, Venu Rajamoni, Mohandas Pai, Sanjay Baru, Aarti Jairat, and to our audience. Thank you. See you tomorrow. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.